freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before
you see, they always seeking the help of the police to protect them, but they are the first to criticize the police when the police are unable to protect them. And you just can't guarantee the safety of a fool, and that's what these folks are, just fools.
In 1945, the Supreme Court used the Interstate Commerce Act to strike down segregation on buses in the case of Irene Morgan v. Commonwealth of Virginia. In 1960, Boynton v. Virginia struck down segregation in restaurants. All Americans, even Southern whites, believed that the desegregation of the South was inevitable, but the Southern whites wanted to make it gradual. The idea of blacks and whites together was shocking and hard to accept for most whites after centuries of segregation. However, after 15 years of waiting, young African Americans involved of the Congress of Racial Equality and Southern Christian Leadership Conference did not wish to wait any longer. A reporter asked 20-year-old freedom rider John Lewis why he couldn't just wait. Lewis simply responded, "If not us, then who? If not now, then when? Will someone else's children have to risk their lives instead of us risking ours?"
You tell us to be patient. We cannot wait. We cannot be patient. We want our freedom and we want it now.
Tired of the lack of enforcement of the rights that had been earned in the Supreme Court, CORE and SCLC decided it was time to act. Feeding off the success they had with sit-ins, they recruited students and others from around the nation to ride on buses into the South, forcing governments to take responsibility for the laws and desegregate the South. They called these the Freedom Rides.
I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Many states were not open to the idea of racial desegregation and were hostile with the Freedom Riders. Throughout the Freedom Rides, many riders were physically assaulted. White mobs would rock the buses, slash the tires, and even throw bombs into the buses through the windows. For instance, 2 buses left Atlanta about an hour apart on the 11th day of the Freedom Ride. The Ku Klux Klan was waiting for them when they reached Alabama. They attacked the bus for at least 15 terrifying minutes. The driver went for help and left the passengers. The bus, however, caught fire, and the riders' lungs filled with smoke. The riders poured out into the grass into the hands of the Klan. Though most escaped without any serious injury, various other attacks occurred in other cities, such as Birmingham.
And then all of a sudden, just like whoosh, magic, white people, sticks and bricks, nigger, kill the niggers. We were still on the bus, you know, but I think we all kind of decided, well, maybe we should go off the back of this bus, because we kind of knew that if we had gone off the back of the bus, that maybe they wouldn't be so bad on us. They wanted us to go off the back of the bus, and we decided, no, we'll go off the front and take what's coming to us.
I was wheeled around, grabbed me by the arm, pulled me around. And I said the magic words, "Get back. I'm from the federal government." Or maybe I'm from the Justice Department. And I never saw the blow, but they hit me right there with a pipe. And I just never been knocked unconscious in my life.
Despite the Supreme Court victories, the Kennedy administration did not want to force the Southern governments to take responsibility for the laws at first. President John F. Kennedy and his brother, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, had the responsibility to enforce the laws and make sure that the Southern governments followed the law of the land.
John Kennedy had never taken a strong position on behalf of civil rights. Robert Kennedy was more inclined, more sympathetic, I think, instinctively than his older brother was. Their main concern in 1961 and 62 and 63 was to get around the civil rights issue so that they could go on to other things that they thought were more important and more achievable. They believed that it would be very difficult, and probably impossible, to get civil rights legislation out of the United States Congress.
The Kennedy administration was so worried that someone would get killed, they sent a young representative from Nashville, John Siegenthaler, to intervene on behalf of the Freedom Riders and try to end the rides once and for all.
I think the President and the Attorney General and I, and most of the people in the administration, knowing how dangerous it was, and knowing there were cases like Emmett Till, 40 martyrs of the movement, I think we had all hoped that the Freedom Rides would end without somebody getting killed.
Siegenthaler mentioned that the government and the Kennedy administration were scared that people were going to get killed. How did the Freedom Riders feel about that?
Well, we left on the original ride on May 4th, 1961. And those of us that left again on May 17th, 1961, we couldn't let the threat of violence or the possibility of death stop the Freedom Ride. I think some of us were prepared to die.
Those who argued against the Freedom Rides claimed that change was inevitable. By antagonizing Southern whites, they encouraged harsher opposition. However, the Freedom Rides were instrumental in advancing the cause of desegregation and pushing many people who were neutral about civil rights into advocating for the rights of minorities. Inspired by the violence they had witnessed in the first rides, more continued to ride into Alabama and Mississippi. More and more riders were arrested until Parchman Prison was filled to capacity. Finally, 6 months after the first Freedom Rides, fearful that someone would get killed, Robert F. Kennedy decided that it was time to end it.
In the summer of 1961, more than 300 people, men, women, black, white, teachers, college professors, lawyers, ministers, went to jail. And Bobby Kennedy and his brother Robert Kennedy intervened and got the Interstate Commerce Commission to issue an order banning discrimination in public transportation.
The Freedom Riders accomplished their goals of forcing the government to take responsibility for the rights of African Americans. They were a great influence leading up to having the rights of all people established and eventually enforced. Among those rights include sitting integrated on buses and eating in the same restaurants. These victories led to further rights and eventually led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and the Fair Housing Act of 1968. The Freedom Rides were vital because 15 years after the South was legally supposed to, they still had not desegregated. The Freedom Riders made it happen in 6 months. In the words of John Lewis, "If not us, then who? If not now, then when?"
I do think that Freedom Rides were the seminal moment.
Meeting Rosa Parks in 1957 when I was 17, meeting Dr. King in 1958 when I was 18, changed my life. I was inspired to get in trouble, what I call good trouble, necessary trouble.
Segregation must be stopped. It must be broken down. Those of us who are on the Freedom Ride, who will continue the Freedom Ride, I'm not sure that I'll be able to, but we're going on to New Orleans no matter what happens. We're dedicated to this. We'll take hitting, we'll take beating. We're willing to accept death. But we're going to keep coming until we can ride from anywhere in the South to any place else in the South.
Christ is born, and Jesus Christ is born.